Julia Fisher. Welcome to this week's edition of The Olive Tree, bringing you news and stories from believers living in Israel. As with all our programmes over the past year, despite the pandemic and not being able to travel, we have regularly recorded these interviews down the line. My guest today is Oded Soshani, a Jewish believer living in Jerusalem, where he is the pastor of a congregation. This interview was recorded in mid-February when Israel was just beginning to emerge from lockdown. Oded begins by describing his own background.
I was born to a secular Jewish family in the Tel Aviv area. Since a very young age, the Lord put in my heart a deep desire to seek the truth about life. I was into transcendental meditation. I was going to two separate synagogues looking for truth. And then just giving you the short version of things. But my sister became a believer. And through almost 2 years of watching her life and the lives of her friends, I realized nobody convinced me from scripture, but I saw in their lives a spiritual reality that they knew God personally and that they had the capacity for perfect love, which I was looking in all the wrong places. So after my army service, I invited Yeshua, Jesus, to be the Lord of my life.
And tell me about Sandy. How did you meet your wife?
A friend match made us. That was as simple as that. We met on the beach and we were a group of believers on the beach. I fell in love with her at first sight. But coming from the world, I knew there's no fooling around. I don't know if it's the right English word, but there's no playing around with ladies. So I went into prayer and fasting, and I talked to the Lord about the feelings I had for this lovely, beautiful lady. And very quickly, the Lord said to me, "This is your wife." And shortly after, the Lord said to Sandy, and then it became the Lord's matchmaking. The Lord said to Sandy, "This is your husband." And without him saying this to both of us, we would not have even started dating.
Oded, you're from very different backgrounds. Sandy's from America, from a very religious family. You're quite the opposite. You're Israeli from a non-religious family. So quite a match.
Quite. And I came with a baggage from many years of different family stories. So I did not have the self-assurance. So we had Sandy and I had a lot to work through in our marriage. But it was definitely the Lord's call on our lives to come together. Here we are, almost 39 years later.
Did you have any idea that you would end up as you are now, pastoring a congregation? Because for many years you were in business, weren't you?
Absolutely not. I had no idea. Actually, when I was really a young believer, I received two prophecies, which they were scriptures. And they were almost identical scriptures from different places in the Bible, but they made no sense to me. Absolutely no sense. So I forgot about them. Then the Lord told me to go and study engineering. I became a mechanical engineer. I worked as a project manager in the building industry in Israel. Did that for 13 years. And when the Lord began to call me into full-time ministry, only after I was prayed for to become a pastor, I was appointed before the congregation as a pastor, I remembered these two prophecies, and I looked at them and they still barely made any sense. And now, 18 years later, they have a little bit of a sense, or 16 years later, they make a little bit of a sense, but yes, I did not know that God is going to call me in to be a pastor. I feel honored to be considered to be a pastor. It's definitely a harder job to be a pastor than to be a project engineer in the building industry, and it's one of the toughest industries in Israel. It's not the working hours, it's the caring for people that is different and has a different emotional load with it.
And this was a congregation that you started, didn't you? It's a Hebrew-speaking congregation, right?
Well, actually, it started as a small home group, Hebrew-speaking home group, and it was a Hebrew meeting following an English meeting in King of Kings. But once I became the pastor, and everything turned into Hebrew, and my mannerism is not North American, nor is it English. So we had a shift in people, and very quickly the crowd became completely local. We also have foreigners who live in the land, but the flavor of the congregation was totally different. We are actually financially and spiritually independent for quite many years now. We're still under administrative umbrella of King of Kings in Jerusalem, but we have our own name, Melech HaMelachim. We're about to launch our own website, and financially, we're independent for many years now. So we are an independent congregation now.
Now, we can't say much more without referring to 2020 and COVID. So, what was the effect of COVID on your work and on the congregation? How did you cope with it?
Wow. How did the world cope with it? We had to move. We actually moved within 1 week. In the first closure, we moved from 1 week from physical meetings into Zoom meetings. We had somebody on our staff who had ample experience with Zoom. So one Friday we were in the hall. The next Friday we were in Zoom. And this, until now, this was from mid-March. Until now, we're still in Zoom, and there were only few times that we were able to meet in the park in small numbers, 20 or 50. So we did that for, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. We've been on Zoom most of the time, and it's been very difficult. Big adjustment. Like the rest of the world, when you are on Zoom, you can become lazy because you don't have the travel time anywhere. You can be, I can speak with you in England and not travel to England, or you not traveling to Jerusalem to interview me, and so forth. So it's been hard on home groups and personal interaction. We have done a lot of rounds of calling the entire congregation, calling families, calling individuals, trying to see how they're doing. I'm trying to call them now in the last month or so. I'm trying to call people on their birthday just to see how they're doing, wish them happy birthday, but also see how they're doing. We're still in the thick of the woods, even though they have begun yesterday to open some of the businesses in Israel. Corona is still high here. Government instructions are not clear. Government decisions are not backed by legislation, so they cannot be really activated in the public realm. Like everybody else, we live in a season of insecurity in every area. Personal insecurity, health insecurity, financial insecurity. Some of our people lost their jobs. Some people were forced to take an unpaid leave, and then the Israeli national insurance paid them part of their salary while they were in unpaid leave. Some were able to get back to work. Um, the entire fabric of fellowship, meeting physically, has been broken down. Just on Sunday, yesterday, I sent the congregation a letter for me, encouraging the people with some verses, but basically encouraging people into fellowship, encouraging them that this is what we are called. We are members of one body, physical members of one body, whose head is Yeshua. Um, it's a tough season. It's a hard season. The interesting part in it, it's not the central part of it. We've been able to baptize and prepare another person into baptism sometime soon. We've had a wedding and so forth, but the entire social fabric has been squashed down. So it's a difficult season we live in.
Some people would say it's been an opportunity to explore new ways of doing fellowship. But it sounds as though for you in Jerusalem, it's been a really challenging time.
Yes. It's been, but in some ways, it's been good. It's been everybody's been overflowed with Zoom meetings,
Yes.
especially families whose kids are being educated through or being taught through Zoom. So
Hmm.
nobody really wants to be in Zoom. We actually have a Purim party coming up in 4 days on Friday, and we're doing everything in Zoom. We're sending packets of greetings and some sweets and some games to the entire congregation this week. So on Friday, when everybody gathers together, or whoever connects on Zoom, we will have a costume party and reading of the scroll and so forth and so on. So we're trying to do our best. It's as I said, it's a difficult season to adjust, and we have seen an interesting phenomena when things were not on severe closure. Zoom attendance was um, somewhat about a fourth of the congregation. And when there was an intense closure for several weeks, it immediately the attendance jumped 25%.
Wow.
Um, People were interested in fellowship and were there. And once the closure has slowed down and it's been laxed and people can go out to work and shopping and stuff, then attendance has dropped down. It's yet to be seen what congregational life would look after. But yes, we are realizing that we have to adjust for the new era of living on a digital world.
You've been listening to Oded Soshani, a Messianic Jewish pastor in Jerusalem, and we'll hear more from him on next week's programme. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please visit our website, olivetreefund.org. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.